From the inner sense of time comes the ancient poet's rhyme, bringing us the master key to open up the mystery. From the depth of time and space, we arrive in quiet grace, finding what is meant to be as we explore the mystery, pouring forth from days gone by. We can hear the poet sigh from the depth of ecstasy, moving into mystery.
Hello and welcome again to Creative Connections. I'm your host, Gary Blanchard, and today my guest is poet Mary Jennings. Mary, welcome.
Thank you, Gary.
So, what brought you into poetry?
What brought me into poetry? Well, I mainly have a background in theater. I've been trained, but I've been trained to be. I was in training to be an actress at one time. But my degree in my bachelor's degree is in English literature. So I've had the kind of like flip-flopping between acting and writing. I've been mainly wanted to write novels and plays. When I turned about 30, I've been writing in my journal and realizing that some things I've been writing come off like poetry. So I started formulating that into poems. And I first brought my poetry back when I was living out near Boston to the Stone Soup Poets, which was a Monday night open mic that happened. That was happening at the old TT the Bears place at the time. It's been at different places, but TT the Bears was very memorable at the time. Yeah, and I had and it was a great vibe there, and most of the people there were very welcoming, especially Jack Powers, who was the founder of Stone Soup Poets. But in spite of that, my poetry wasn't that great at the time. Like I said, I was only 30 at the time, and I was going through a different transition. I transitioned from aspiring actress to performance poet.
Okay.
But at the time, I had also made plans to move out to Western Massachusetts to follow my job out here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, when you write, what inspires you?
What inspires me? Human nature. Character motivation, which all comes from my theatrical training, but also from the real world as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you kind of refer to yourself as a performance poet.
Yes.
So what for people who aren't familiar, what's
well, they mostly it's mainly on the stage. Or it doesn't have to be behind a podium, but
okay. So and kind of getting away from poetry as a written form to an oral form.
Yes, and but for those 30 years, I haven't had any publication credentials except for a recording that I made with my colleagues 20 years ago,
Okay.
and which counted as a publication credit. And then recently, when I was urged to start submitting poetry finally, I got three literary journal publications.
Okay. And I think it's so important that, it's nice to be published,
It is.
but I think it's also nice to create art for the sake of creating art.
It is.
And sometimes there's sort of that struggle between, wanting to create and then trying to get it out to other people.
It is.
One thing you're doing is that you have started a spoken word open mic.
I have.
And what spoken word includes more than poetry?
More than poetry, it can be storytelling, dramatic monologues. And it goes back my theater training. Stories.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where is this held and when?
It's at the Chicopee Public Library. It's held there every third Tuesday of the month. Sign up starts at 6:30, and it runs for about an hour.
Okay.
From there.
So read us something.
Okay. All right. This is one of my first poems published in Exist Otherwise, which is a new online journal. And it's called Reluctancy of Devotion. Up to your neck in being co-opted, adapted, inspected, disinfected, suspected, ejected, written off into the void. There is reluctancy of devotion, never the right part to begin with. Best years of your life spent trying to be encompassed into the works, proving yourself worthy to be part of the cohesive unit. Unity, they proclaim. If none, who's to blame? Now that you're out, you're crying, where's the rest of me? Hold your head high. The only thing that's left of you. Be glad of that somehow.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful. And it speaks to me, and this is what I love about poetry, is that everybody hears different things. But it kind of speaks to that struggle between being an individual and also trying to be a part of the whole.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So where do you come down on that?
Where do I come down on that? I tend to like when I speak, when I do reach out to the individual, and like I've spent many years in my day job trying to be part of the whole and not quite measuring up, and not just in jobs but in other situations.
Yeah, there's a freedom in deciding that, this is who I am. Take it or
Yes.
leave it.
Right.
So, how did you go about getting that submitted? And
a friend had recently submitted a poem to that same to Exist Otherwise, and I decided to submit one as well. It was a prompt-based, mainly prompt-based magazine. So I followed their prompts, and I think the prompt at time for this submission was it's not enough for the writer to put his arm into the machine. He has to put his whole being into it.
That's interesting.
And I've been, I've spent a good part of my life, in my day job as in the machine.
Right. Yeah. So, when you are writing, do you like a prompt, or do you prefer to kind of just come in and let something come to you?
Well, if I find a good prompt, I'll work with it. I tend to have an exercise that I use that I won't get into, that helps me in putting together a poem.
Okay.
Yes.
When you write, are you worried about form or anything like that, or?
I haven't thought about form. I've always considered myself free form, and there'd been a long period when I wasn't writing poetry. I was, I had attempted a novel about 17 years ago, and then I went into music for a while as well, and I decided I needed to keep the try to keep the poetry coming again. So I started started writing cinquains for a while. It's a short form of poetry that's 5 lines long. That's cinquain. And it had a 2, 4, 6, 8, 2 meter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I have dabbled with poetry, and
Yes.
and I find that the form confines me.
It does.
But on the other hand, I'm a songwriter, and I'm constantly fitting things into form. But
right,
that's
yeah.
where I see the difference kind of between song lyrics and poetry.
Yeah.
Are you kind of a person who is more trying to get a point across directly rather than through like metaphor or?
Well, I was guilty of metaphors in my early writing. So, when I got criticized, by one person, I'd gotten away from it. I had it, shortly after my move out here. I had to take a time out because I was just running, a lot of subject matter into the ground, and just. And then when I was ready, I got back into it again.
Okay. What brought you back into poetry?
What brought me back? Oh God. Well, it's just that time out after I first moved out. I was just kind of laying low from everyone at the time, and just working my job, and I was also in a new relationship, and I just drifted back into it. And
Okay. Do you have another poem for us?
yes, I'll read one of the ones that was recently published in Meat for Tea magazine. I've been working on a series of poetry under the title Love Child Ballads.
Okay.
Play on the child ballads. And so one of them is called The Ballad of the Humor-Impaired Woman. She is a pear-shaped woman, ripe for the picking and dumping of mud upon, by the two-bit comic seeking amusement from his humdrum existence. "Hey, Miss Snip, why are you so serious? Don't I get a laugh from you?" He's read, "Take a long walk off a short pier," right? But he still wants to ride her pride off into the sunset, just because her hormones took a dip, her womb bore no kids. She lives the values she's been taught. Work hard and reap many rewards. Treat others as you want to be treated. But no matter how hard she works and how much she gives, all she gets is a punchline to the story of her life. She's wasted her graces on one who gets his wit from the sewer, which he casts her integrity in, initially pretending to be in awe of her, thus taking her for a fool. For her, it's about the struggle. If she wanted to find humor in it, she would know where to look, not from the two-bit comic who uses humor to try to shame her for her life choices. She made that choice because the only child she raised was herself, aware early on of denigration, calling itself love. She's better off alone than to be mismatched with one who wants to grind her to a pulp, like the two-bit comic who couldn't get his wife to laugh at his jokes. Therefore, he tries them out on somebody new with similar results. Unlike the wife, she doesn't live with him and won't keep his house for him. She's no fool there. No man needed to make her honest. She made herself honest, which is what he can't handle, thus the derision he calls humor. The pear-shaped woman bears fruit in other ways and insists you don't let it go to rot. It can nourish you or it can poison you, depending on your constitution. The pear-shaped woman's sense of humor is alive and well, both juicy and dry, tart and sweet, whatever the situation requires. She just doesn't find you amusing.
I really like that.
Thank you.
There's so much in there.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing I liked was where you were talking about the bearing fruit.
Yes.
And as a society, we have ideas of what bearing fruit should be.
Yes.
And it's either having children, having some type of success in the business world or whatever it might be.
Yes.
But we all find our own fruit.
We do.
And, learning to embrace that and to embrace who we are rather than who we're told we should be.
Right.
Is so strong and powerful. And, the woman in that poem comes across as this very powerful person in this two-bit comic.
Yes.
Who is trying so hard to denigrate her is just lowering himself
Right.
without affecting her.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Absolutely wonderful. So, I want to get back to the open mic for a minute.
Okay.
What is a usual session like?
Well, we've just had our first one last month.
Okay.
Okay, it's I've scheduled for about for 10 readers, reading, about 5 minutes
Okay.
each.
So, what would you say is the ratio between like poets and storytellers?
It's been mostly poets that came.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, storytelling, I think, is a form that is, like through things like The Moth and all that, is coming back into appreciation.
It is.
So it's nice to offer folks that possibility.
Yes, that's what I want to do.
Yeah. Why do you think poetry as a form has such staying power?
That's a very hard question to answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes, it goes, it goes in and out.
In and out, right,
Yeah.
yeah. But it kind of keeps coming back.
It does.
What does it do for you?
What does it do for me? Well, it helps, it helps keep my mind, real about things and not let anybody else try and sway me. And
Okay.
yeah,
So it sounds like maybe through the writing, you're able to look at your thoughts and feelings and sort of solidify them.
it does.
Yeah, I often tell people that when you write something down, it becomes so much more real than when it's just in your head.
Yes,
Now, you say you tried writing a novel.
I did. Yeah.
Yeah, what was that about?
What was that about?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, it's stuck on the. Yeah, I haven't finished it.
Yeah.
I was actually into a second draft, but it was a satire
Okay.
about not just about the poetry scene, but about about a scam poetry contest.
And there are some of those.
Yeah, yeah, and it concerned it concerned a group of urban poets in the spoken word scene. One of them who's kind of was like a wild and crazy guy instituted a gag with the contest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of. I guess the poetry contest scam is kind of like a thing of the past right now, thankfully.
Thankfully, but
Yes.
yeah. How different is it writing like a novel from poetry?
You've really got to you've really got to keep at it. I always figured with poetry, you finish it. It's in so few words
Right.
than a novel that you can. It's much easier to finish than a novel. You really have to keep your mind, on it constantly. And for me, certain you drop characters, plot lines change. Yeah.
It's funny because I see interviews with writers, and I happen to be a mystery fan. And they'll say, well, I thought so and so did it, but as I was writing, I found out that.
Yeah.
And as a reader, you think, you wrote this, you didn't know what was going to happen, but
Yeah.
I think there is a truth to that as you work on a character, they do sort of start
Yeah.
taking on a life and may not listen to what you're telling them
Yeah.
you want them to do.
Mm-hmm.
So if people are interested in performing at this spoken word open mic, they would go to the Chicopee Free Library,
Chicopee Public Library,
Public Library on
Front Street.
Front Street. And what day is it?
It's third Tuesday of the month. The next one is on March 21st.
Okay, yeah. So, for the writers out there, and there are many, I would really encourage you to go out there and do that, because there's such a joy in putting your work in front of other people and sharing it. There's a joy in creating it, but there is a different joy in sharing it.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of which, do you have another poem for us?
Sure. I will. I'll read another one from the Love Child Ballads.
All right.
Okay. The Ballad of Body Language. Playing I spy upon the one out of sync with the rest. The one in charge calls out, shape up or ship out. Your attitude is not welcome here. Soon it is followed by a message to the company. Take a look at the one who refuses to be the glue holding us together, and don't be like her. Myopia and illiteracy go hand in hand, not paying heed to the real message that says, I'm in pain, I'm bleeding inside. Once the pain is evident, empty words of caring come raining down, condolences for the not yet dead, preparing her for the ditch to be buried in and forgotten. But soon she will heal herself without any help from the cluster and walk away from it all, not mincing words when she says, this company makes me sick. Her walking away is all the body language she needs to deliver.
I like that.
Yes.
And just for our listeners and watchers who may not be familiar with the child ballads, they are a series of Old English ballads gathered by
Francis Child.
I couldn't remember his first name.
Yeah.
And they're known in the folk music scene as the child ballads.
Yes.
So that's a beautiful play on that.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, Mary, thank you so much for coming in
You're welcome.
and sharing your work with us. Where could people maybe find your poetry?
Like I mentioned, I'm on Exist Otherwise in the on the second issue of Exist Otherwise, and the previous issue of Meat for Tea.
Okay.
The electric issue, and what the other Oddball magazine.
All right, great. Well, Mary, thanks for coming in, and I want to thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Creative Connections.
Life goes by so quickly, time just slips away, but tomorrow brings a brighter day. Riding on a shooting star, heading out toward a dream. Tomorrow's even closer than it seems.